I'm glad to see everybody here. While I'm doing the presentation, I'm going to mute everybody so that background noise on your end may not interfere with, what's going on. And at the end, I will open it up for questions. And so we're going to go ahead and get going. Today we're talking about in-house authorization lists. It's a way for Keystroke, primarily for checks, to determine whether someone has good checks or bad checks without going through a check verification method with a processor of some type. So to kind of give you an idea of Keystroke Live, everybody, we do this every week, same time, same place, same login information, which did change, by the way, a couple of weeks ago. So let's get started with the in-house list. Primarily used for checks. So you kind of need to think about, since you can only have one authorization method per payment type, do you want to keep a list of people that are allowed checks, and that might be a small list, or are you going to allow pretty much everybody to write checks except for the people who have written bad checks? So that's kind of depending on your business model and how much checks are involved with your payments and that sort of thing. You need to determine, do you want to create a good checklist only accepting payments from the listed good check writers, or do you just want to keep a list of those that write bad checks and allow other people to write checks as long as they're not on the list? There are, and I'm going to show you this in Keystroke, when we set up the authorization method, there's an unlisted references. That determines if someone is not on that list, how Keystroke's going to deal with them. So on good checks, on a good checklist, you're all listed, unlisted references might be $0 if they're not on the list. You won't accept a check from them, or something low like $10 or $20 or something like that maximum until they've proven their credit. On a bad check list, your all unlisted references amount is going to be something high, or the highest check you might accept from somebody. And then when you start putting people on these lists, there's a payment reference that you fill in when you're using this payment, and it needs to be consistent with how you enter these in the authorization method. Some things that people use are something like the checking account number. And you could enter it with a micro reader, which is a magnetic ink character recognition reader that will read that information off the check. You could put in the customer name or number, or their phone number, or their driver's license number. It's important to be consistent, though. For example, if you put some phone numbers in with dashes, some with periods, some with no separators, some with area codes without, that's going to kind of be inconsistent. So you do need to be consistent for this to work properly. Let's kind of take a look at Keystroke and how this is set up. We are in Configuration Manager, and I have set up under my check authorization method, at least to start out, an auth method called good checks. So if we take a look at that, and I added it by hitting F2 or insert on this list, or going to the tables menu and authorization methods and adding one. But let's kind of take a look at my good checklist. In my example, anything that's in the payment reference field, anything that you put in there that doesn't match any other criteria on this list, we're going to allow to write a check for up to $20. People who are on this list can write checks for up to $200. Now, in both these cases, with good check or bad check, a manager with an appropriate security level can override this authorization. So for a good check, if you put in a number, in this case, that's not on this list for more than $20, or even somebody that's on this list for more than $200, if you meet the security level to override credit limit, which is a sales manager security level, you can still accept the check from that person. So let's take a look and see how this is going to work. We're going to save this payment type. We're going to go to Sales Manager. And we're going to sell something. We're going to sell something that's a high dollar amount. And we're going to accept a check payment. So this reference field is what relates to what's in the reference on the authorization method. So in this case, I have, the reference I'm going to use is 321, which is on my good checklist. And I can click on Auth. Oh, it exceeds the $200 limit for this payment type. I can hit OK. Now, because I have the security level to force approval, I can say yes. But in this case, I say no. And since it tells me it's $200, I can put in $200, but then it's going to ask me for more money. And in this case, we'll do some cash and we'll save it. Now, if you put something in here that we're going to select a check for, and I'm going to put in a number here that I know isn't on my list, but because my unlisted amount is $20, it's going to allow this because this amount is less than $20. So that's kind of what the good check list is about. Let's take a look at the bad checklist. So we're going to go back to our sales payment types, and we're going to go back to my authorization method. And I have set one up for bad checks. Now remember, in this case, all unlisted references means if you put something in the payment reference field that does not match something on this list, then their check's going to be accepted for up to $1,000. If I put something in this reference field that matches one of these, we're not going to accept any checks from them. So they're kind of the opposite. Remember, you can only use one authorization method per payment type. So determine with your business, do you want to keep track of bad checks that you're not going to accept, or are you going to limit the check writers or the amount for most people? Only have a few people you accept large dollar checks from. So let's take a look at how the bad check works. We're going to sell something here for a check. And I know this reference 123 is on my bad checklist. If I choose to auth, and this is a little bit different, it's not approved for this payment type. So you get a little different message. Again, you can override it if you'd like to force approval. If you don't have the security level to do that, this box won't show up. So that tells me, oh, I can't take a check. Well, this person comes up with a different checking account, and this is the number I'm going to put in. Well, because my all unlisted references in my bad checklist allows up to $1,000 if they're not on the list, this is going to get approved. So you kind of need to remember what's going to work best for your business. So let's kind of take a look back at the points. You're going to have a good checklist where you're only going to accept check payments from people that are on the list, except if they meet the criteria that all unlisted references. Maybe you're only going to accept checks for $10 or $20, or you could even set it to 0, that if they're not on the good checklist, you don't accept a check from them. For the bad checklist, you track checking accounts or people, depending on the reference you're going to use, and if they try to pay for something with a check, it's going to deny them. Anybody else that's not on that list, your unlisted references amount is going to be the maximum amount of a check you're going to accept. And remember, what you put in that reference field needs to match and be consistent with what's in your list for your authorization. So this takes some thought putting into it and consistency when you put that information in. In most cases, I've seen people use it with either the checking account number or the microscan. Those are pretty straightforward. The rest of these, like a customer name, a phone number, driver's license number, you can get inconsistencies in putting things on that list, so in which case it may not work the way you want it to. So you want to have someone that's going to be consistent. Does anybody have any questions on our in-house list?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Scott?
Conceivably, if the person has a $200 limit, you could run back. If the employee wanted to be mischievous, he could run back, and the second payment method could be another check for $200?
Yes, that is true.
All right. Okay. Is there any way to tie this list to the customer list, or is there a way in the customer list to screen people out from accepting checks?
No, there isn't. Okay. It's not like on account where you can restrict people based on what's on their customer record. It's not like that. So this is something that is going to need to be maintained by someone who's going to be consistent.
Okay, the only other thing you could do is you could use their customer number in Keystroke on the approved check list.
Correct.
Okay.
But you have to enter it there. Correct. And make sure the clerk adds the customer to the transaction. If it's something like that, you're going to have to make sure that, the clerk is actually going to add the customer.
But you could have a list of only those customers that have the approval for checks. And so if she puts a customer on that doesn't have the approval, then it's going to go back to this denial if it's on a good good checklist.
Correct. Okay. Correct. Anybody else?
Are you going to be in Long Beach?
I will be, and next week is going to be kind of a preview for the Dealer Summit. I will be there all day Monday and for a little while Tuesday morning, and then I'm taking off, and Mike Tabor will be there Tuesday afternoon.
Okay.
For Wednesday. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming to Keystroke Live this week. Remember, same time, same place. Next week is going to be a preview of what's coming up at the Dealer Summit, which is the following week. I believe Dave Hunsinger may be doing it, but there may be some other people involved as well. Hope everybody has a great day, and hopefully I'll see you in Long Beach.